Hey guys, it's Matt from Think here. I am just going to give everyone a couple of minutes just to make sure we get everyone we need. A few of you connected in already, which is great to see. So hopefully we're expecting a few more. So I'll just give them another 3 or 4 minutes. So we'll be with you shortly. Thanks. Righto, so we've got a few more people in the list now, which is excellent. So we'll call it 1 o'clock, even though it's 12:59, and kind of just start cracking on into it. Actually ironed a shirt today, which is the first time I've got to use the iron in 8 weeks or so. Still working from home at the moment. Yeah, it's an interesting. One of our marketing team got in touch with me earlier wanting an updated photo for the website. And it's like, I look like an absolute monster. I haven't had a haircut for 8 weeks or so. So it's a little bit strange, some of these, some of the working from home business, but the cybersecurity side of it is definitely something we're experiencing. We're getting quite a bit of exposure from our customers from. So we'll move into it. So we're going to go through what cybercrime is. We're going to look at some examples, going to look at what to do, and basically just kind of see how you can keep you and your staff safe online when working from home, particularly. It's interesting. So we've got a kind of a group of examples, a group of different types of crime that people seem to be committing online. We're covering the 6 sort of main types, being phishing emails, ransomware, pop-up ads, social engineering, viruses, and hacking. And we're going to have a look at these and see how they might relate to your businesses and what you can do to kind of avoid these sort of things becoming a problem for you. So what is cybercrime? Criminal activity involving a computer, network, device, or network. Cybercrime, also known as technology-enabled crime, electronic crime, e-crime, or online crime, refers to criminal activity that involves the internet, a computer, smartphone, or other electronic devices. Cybercrime covers a whole wide range of incidents, from pure cybercrime where computers are the target, for example, computer intrusions, hacking, whatever, through to cyber-enabled crime, where technology is used to assist in the committing of a crime. Most crimes have sort of an element of this now. So that's kind of what we're looking at overall, and we're going to look at how you can avoid some of these sort of things from making, from you getting victimized by some of these sort of things. So let's have a bit of a look and see. So we're going to start off with phishing emails. So this is in order for the moment. Phishing emails I'm starting with because it tends to be the boat that gets used to get cyber intrusions into people's systems more often than not. And in those 6 things we looked at, the other 5 of them tend to more often than not end up with a phishing email as one of the methods that gets used for it. So phishing emails are emails that appear to come from a known source. However, they're doing their best to hide behind their true identity. So if we take a look at this little example, Gary Wilkins is one of our guys, Regan Potts' manager. However, the email address that this particular Gary Wilkins has come from is not even closely related to one of our internal messages. So this is kind of a hybrid of a phishing attempt. He's trying to get Regan to bite and go back to him. And we have seen this be successful in some cases whereby maybe a finance officer or something communicates with an executive in order to ask for an authorization on a transfer or something like that. And we've actually had situations where this has been successful. You can't always block messages like this particular one, it's coming from a legitimate domain name. It's coming, there's nothing in it that's particularly dodgy. It doesn't have any attachments or anything like that. So in this particular circumstance, a mail filter system, so a spam filter essentially, will have a really hard time picking something like this up. And that is what makes these ones really tricky to filter, is just that they're quite bland and they set an expectation for a response, really. So your staff, if they get presented with something like this, particularly more senior staff, they do need to be aware to double check these sort of bits and pieces. You can see quite clearly in this situation, and this is what Outlook generally presents, certainly hovering over the name, it will indicate what address it's coming from. And if it's not associated with you, then ignore it, delete it. If in doubt, pass it on to us, and we're happy to have a bit of a look for you. So we'll have a look at a phishing attachment. So this is a phishing attachment. So this is a general email message, but it has an attached message with it. And you can see here that this particular one is pretending to be a voicemail message. So the things you can check are, do you know the sender? In this particular case, we don't know Reggie Reg, and it's not an internal email address. So it kind of shows itself pretty quickly that it's a fake one, but were you expecting it? So in the instance of voicemail messages, if you have a voicemail enabled phone system, presumably you've seen the messages from it before, in which case it's important to make sure that they look the same and the formatting's all the same and everything. That's pretty obvious to tell. In this particular situation, this is a zip file, and although some of us still use zip files as a method of transferring data between people, it's less and less frequent. So just note that is a perfect packet to send a dodgy file, a virus or something into someone's system as a zip file, because it hides things inside it. That said, most email spam filters can read inside zip files, so they should be able to determine whether there's a problem child file inside it or not. So really important just to know where the message is coming from, what it contained, and see whether you're expecting it or not. One of the other things that I always notice with these is, official emails don't tend to have crappy grammar. They don't tend to have multiple exclamation marks and things like that. So when you see you have received a secure message, it's not exciting enough that it needs 3 exclamation marks, I wouldn't have thought. And most actual official systems won't have those sort of things in there. So poor grammar is actually something we use quite often to determine whether a message is legitimate or not. Certainly in this case, it's clearly not a good thing. So we'll move along. So here's a couple more sort of examples of what sort of files you might find. Attachments are an easy entry into a corporate network and can easily be opened in error. The commonly used files formats are executable.exe files, JavaScript files, .js files, and hyperlinks. So when you have a message, an email message that has a link in it, it's always important to hover over the link. So in this instance, we hover over Google and it comes up saying it actually takes you to thinking.co.nz. Because of that, you can very easily disguise a less desirable website behind something that has some sort of legitimacy. So in this particular instance, you want to be a bit careful. I've got a couple of examples outside of this. So if you bear with me, we'll have a quick look here and just open some of these. So this is a particularly fairly common sort of email message that would be a phishing one. We kind of collect these at work, so we've usually got a pretty good set of examples. But in this instance, it's a .ca domain name. We don't know this person, and it's gone to a technical team, despite being something clearly accounting related. And then you'll notice that the PDF document attached here, it's not actually a PDF document. If you hover the mouse over it, it's actually a hyperlink. So it's a picture in the email message that links you to a website. In this instance, it's jfreecss.co.nz, so in this instance, this isn't even an attachment. It's an image file embedded into the email. So in this circumstance, you'd be looking at sort of avoiding something like this and forwarding it on to your IT team just to have a bit of a look at if you're getting those sort of things regularly. One of those actual voicemail message notifications we've had recently as well. Sorry, not that one. This one here, I think. Yeah, so this one appears to be an email message, an email voice message that might have come from a phone system or something, and it has a link to a web page. So if you hover over it, again, this is an example of the hyperlink. If you hover over it, you can see pretty clearly that it takes you to a completely different web page that doesn't have quite the legitimacy you might expect from a premium voicemail platform that you might be using. So yeah, anyway, we'll jump back into it. We're going to have a look at ransomware now. So this is one of the kind of the more nasty virus types that seems to get into computer systems. We've had quite a sort of a reasonable amount of exposure to it. It finds its way in all sorts of horrible ways into computer systems, and it's really nasty with respect to what it actually does. So it's a form of malicious software that encrypts a user's data and system files, rendering them unusable unless a ransom is paid. Most commonly, it's set in through infected links, email attachments, and it's targeted at staff and businesses in the form of a phishing email more often than not. So this particular type of virus, you just want to be careful. Like I said, it comes in through phishing emails quite regularly. Those links, those hyperlinks link you to a website that then gets a bit of software onto your computer and causes all sorts of havoc. Ransomware, so how you can avoid it, I guess let's just start with what it actually does, the encryption process. So essentially it locks all of the files on the computer. You try and open them and they don't work anymore because they have been locked. What you'll then find is a big pop-up appears on the screen of the computer and it says your computer has been locked. Pay 1 Bitcoin now in order to unencrypt your files or something like that. In the past, there was these were actually quite cleverly coded viruses, and they actually worked. You could pay the money and it would unencrypt your system. But then I think just the people wised up to the fact that they were wasting time building things properly and making it actually work, and they might as well just take the money and not unencrypt the files. In which case, a lot of people we'd seen had actually given it a shot, put their money down to try and get their stuff back, and then just ended up in a situation where they got absolutely nothing and had lost $1,000 or whatever the Bitcoin is worth at the time. The only real ways to prevent it, really, so making sure you check all attachments and bits and pieces that come into your email system, even if they've gone through a spam filter. It's important just to look at those rules we talked about just a minute ago and make sure that it's a legitimate email. That's one of the best ways you can do to avoid these sort of things. And general computer IT security, so making sure passwords are not blatantly obvious, and other things like making sure you don't have your computers exposed directly to the internet using port forwards through a router. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a little while. But how can you remediate from it, or what do we do? I mean, basically the only way to fix this problem is to have a really good backup in place before it happens, and then restore from the backup. So we have put here, make sure you have a secure backup. What I mean by that is a lot of people treat things like Dropbox, SharePoint, things like that as a backup solution. Ultimately, they're not. And the way in which Dropbox, for example, reacts to a crypto virus, to a ransomware virus, is by seeing all of the file changes, the lock that happens to each file as a change in it, and then it uploads it over the top of the files that are in Dropbox. So you end up with Dropbox just holding a copy of all of the encrypted data, which is ultimately useless. We have a couple of products which we sell which suit this sort of thing perfectly well. I can see we've got a few customers in amongst this list, and a lot of you guys have already got those sort of products. So that's really good. Really, the only way to fix your computer system, it might even be your entire business IT environment, is to restore from a backup. So that's particularly important. Really, really important to have a good backup in place, and one that's actually secure and actually working properly. The next thing we're going to go on to is pop-ups and ads. So these are another sort of thing that draw people into areas of the internet that are slightly less desirable. Maybe they'll install a piece of software on your computer or something like that. So what we've got here is an Allright ad. It's one of ours, obviously. So this sort of thing pops up in the middle of a screen, and it's usually clearly labeled to match the site at which it's advertising. So like if you browsed a Countdown, for example, to do your online groceries, and it pops up saying how's your experience, and it's got Countdown branding and everything, that's pretty safe, really. And that's what we're trying to show here. It tells you what it's about and what you're signing up to if it's asking for an email address, and it gives you the clear option to close this or get out of it. So an example of a bad pop-up is this sort of thing. It doesn't provide any explanation, really. It really really wants you to click on it. Guys, I seem to have just closed my PowerPoint presentation. There we go. I'll just bring that back up again. My apologies. Really wants you to look at it and doesn't give you the option to close it at all. You'll have seen all sorts of things like these, you know, middle-aged woman gets rid of wrinkles with this one trick sort of ones, or, you know, this one trick your IT consultant doesn't want you to know, click here to learn now, those sort of things. They're the ones to watch out for. They're very seldomly ever anything good. So those are examples of what pop-up ads can look like in a bad or a good way. And these are some of the things that you can use to prevent getting them onto your machines in the first place. And the obvious preventative measures are to avoid unsecure websites. Is don't click on anything that doesn't give you information as to what it is. You know, if you don't know what the page you're on is, then don't go perusing around and clicking on bits and pieces. And if you've got any real queries, then make sure you call us and just have a chat about it. So one of the things you can use to tell whether a website's a legitimate one or not is to see whether the SSL cert is legitimate or not, or has one or not. That's the kind of very most basic part of it, is just to see whether it has one or not. So you'll be familiar with the little lock, the green up in the top of your address bar in your browser. Green tends to mean that someone has paid real money to provide a certificate which proves that they're who they say they are. And a red one indicates that the certificate either doesn't match the website, as in it's got a different certificate. So if that's not matching, then it's not secure, or it doesn't have one at all, in which case there's no evidence to say whether it is a secure site or not. Try and avoid red ones. Unfortunately, you can now. There are some certificate authorities available on the internet for free, so you can make a scam website and also put a certificate on it. So this is not by any means 100% foolproof, but it is worth noting that, you know, you're on the right track usually if you've got a green one there. And this is the kind of thing that gets onto your computer after you've followed one of these links, if you have been sucked in by it. These toolbars that get built into your browser, some of you will have seen them before. Unfortunately, you know, hopefully none of you have them, but, you know, some of you might actually have these sort of things on there. The Babylon toolbar, for example, with these things, they try and suck you in with something for free. It might be a search box that makes it a little bit easier to search in your browser or something like that. But really what they're doing is just collecting information on you, which they can sell. That'll be the things you search for. It might be, you know, you can see this one's got a translate button and stuff like that. It might be collecting information on what you're translating, and some of them are really dodgy. I haven't seen many recently, but there were certainly circumstances a while back where they had keyloggers in, where they just scrape all of the information that went through your web browser, which, you know, might be your bank account login details. And if you don't have two-factor authentication with your bank account, then, you know, that's a really big deal. So avoiding the pop-ups and bits and pieces like that is a really good idea. We'll have a little look at social engineering. So this is the use of deception to manipulate individuals for fraudulent purposes. Could be someone pretending to be from a company they're not. They'll usually ask you for personal information. They'll build false trust with you, and they tend to rely on ignorance. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And one of the most common examples is the fraudulent ISP call. This is an actual example. I won't say who it was, and it doesn't really matter, I guess, but a person pretending to be a customer's internet service provider contacted a customer. They suggested that they were having problems with their internet connection, or that their computer was having problems, and then offered to sort it out free of charge. And in this particular circumstance, they talked them through getting a remote desktop connection going to their computer, so the person at the other end of the phone could see what was going on. And they proceeded to guide them through changing all of their passwords on their online banking, etc., which then just gave them access to it. And in that particular example, someone was out a fair bit of money after allowing this person unauthorized access into their computer. What could this person have done to prevent it from happening? I think, use your head. Why would my ISP be ringing to offer me free technical support? In this particular example, I don't think any of the main internet service providers would be proactively looking for problems with customers' computers and then trying to fix them for free of charge. Generally, telcos are race to the bottom, so the less work they can do, the better. They're not going to be looking for more work, and that goes on to, if it's too good to be true, probably is. And again, if you're getting free IT support from your internet service provider, there's probably some sort of catch. If you're ever unsure, then end the call, just hang up on the person and then call the company they say they're claiming to be from back. That's a pretty decent way to work out whether it's a problem, whether it's an issue or not. And don't allow anyone who isn't your trusted IT support partner to access your computer. In the instance of our customers who are connected in at the moment, you call us because trust us to get into your computer to look after it. Don't let just any old person do it. It's not a good idea, and there certainly can be rather major consequences for doing that. Yeah. So let's have a look at viruses. So viruses are self-extracting, self-replicating files that are designed to corrupt key files and make them unusable. These started to slip out of development favor as the payoff isn't as tangible as ransomware. There's still plenty of flavors of these out in the wild, so a solid antivirus product is still the best means of defense, really. So there are certain versions of Windows available now that are fully susceptible to viruses, just due to not being updated any longer. So Windows XP, for example, the early versions of that, if you put them on the internet, they will get some of these viruses that are just floating around in the wild. There's one called the blaster worm virus, which you might remember. It is still out there on the internet, and if you connect a computer that isn't security patched to it, it just gets into your computer and ruins it. I think the end result with that particular one was it stuck the computer in a boot loop, so it would restart itself every 30 seconds. So you'd get into your computer and it would work for a few minutes and then turn itself off and start up again, which is infuriating if you're trying to actually be productive. So a good antivirus product is really the right way to go about that. I'm just thinking the ransomware, the reason what we're saying here, so the viruses that we're talking about now are ones that just get into your computer and ruin them. They don't ask for anything or anything like that. So like I said, most people are tending, virus developers, I guess, are tending to go for more the blackmail or the ransom route in order to actually make some money out of it. And an antivirus product, so in a lot of instances, it will protect you from a crypto or ransomware virus attack as well. But there have certainly been circumstances where the viruses that came out, I'm just trying to remember, there was one a couple of years or a year or so ago, I think WannaCry was what it was called. At the time it was so new, the virus scanners couldn't pick it up. So they picked them up and they got rid of the virus after it had started encrypting things. So it kind of, they would attempt to fix a problem, and they would, but usually the damage was already done, so it almost didn't work out. But like I said, there's a lot of older viruses floating around online at the moment that that can find their way into your system if you're not keeping your computers up to date and you don't have a proper antivirus product on your machine. And it's important just to make sure you've got that level of protection at least. How to avoid them: make sure you have current antivirus software and it's up to date. The reason I say current antivirus software is that the actual antivirus product itself, it has its own software updates, not the virus definition updates, which is what it usually is referring to when it's saying it's updating itself, but the actual software itself. So if you're using a 2013 version of Norton on your computer, then it's not a hell of a lot of use. It might have worked fine in Windows XP, but certainly won't work properly under Windows 10, and you will have issues with it. So those sort of products, you buy a subscription for a period of time, but it doesn't necessarily include the actual base software. It just includes a subscription to the virus definitions. Keep your Windows and applications installed on your computer up to date. Make sure you have a secure backup, is that word again. So, Dropbox, not a backup. Box, not a backup. OneDrive, not really a backup. Make sure you've got a proper piece of software that backs up your computers or your your files properly. What do we do if this happens to you? Generally, we use the Antivirus Pro product that we have installed on your computers to restore, to fix the infection and get rid of the virus. It's not usually a huge deal. If there has been damage to files or anything, then we restore from your backup. Yeah, remediation, call us, essentially. It can be quite a lot of hard work to get on top of those sort of problems. We're going to move into the hacking side of things. So this is where stuff gets a little bit interesting. So hacking is the direct brute force entry into either a single endpoint or network. It's typically achieved by a specific hacker, i.e. like one person running a system to get into your system. The upshot of successful hacking can be data mining, cryptocurrency mining, other system as service disruption. Distributed denial of service is a good example of a brute force attack on a website to cripple a service or site functionality. And these are often used to break into databases and get something of value. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So what we're saying is if someone gets into your system, they can leverage the computing power you might have in your servers or in your business's equipment in order to what we referred to there was to mine cryptocurrency. The payoff initially with cryptocurrencies and mining of them was quite high. Like you got a lot of money out of the amount of time and computing power you put into it. But as they've reached the limit of the number of Bitcoins actually out there, the more computing power is required to get another unit of currency in this instance. So the point is that it got to a point where you couldn't afford to pay for the power that your computer system used with the amount of stuff you gained from it, the amount of cryptocurrency you gained from it. So these guys would go out onto the internet and break into people's systems and use their computer processing power in order to mine cryptocurrency for them. The data mining and databases thing is something that we'll sort of have a bit of a look into as well. So these are circumstances where you have websites, more often than not websites that are broken into, and then the thing they're targeting is the usernames and passwords of accounts that are in those systems. Even in the last, I think we're about 8 months or so in New Zealand, we've had Vodafone New Zealand compromised. We've had Air New Zealand Airpoints compromised, where their entire database of email addresses and passwords was leaked, stolen. Animates, the pet shop online store, Kathmandu online store. There's a couple of other ones as well that escape me at the moment, but where I'm going with this is if you have an email address and password in one of those systems that got broken into, then it's quite possibly been used and put up for sale on the dark web, so people can use them to break into other services. I mean, the issue with this is that most people use their email address for a username, and the password, they will use the same password for every different account that they have access into. And that might be fine if it's, you know, the pet shop online store, probably not a big deal, but if you use the same username and password to log into Xero, or the same username and password to log into your Office 365 email account or something, for example, then that gives someone access into all of those systems as well. And that ties back into the social engineering thing a bit. If someone breaks into your email account, then they can kind of pretend to be you in the sort of stolen identity fashion. So avoiding those sort of things is really important where you can. Yeah, we'll keep moving along. So in order to know that your system has been hacked, your IT service provider will initially need to make sure that you have firewall function enabled on your router and have logging enabled on your network. It's actually really difficult to tell whether someone's broken into your system if you don't keep records of people logging in and out and those sort of things. So that's something your IT partner will need to have done beforehand. We've typically addressed this during the onboarding phase of any of our managed service customers, but if you're not one of our managed service customers, then it is kind of important to get your IT vendor to check, make sure that those sort of things are done. How to avoid it and preventative measures. Don't open remote desktop ports from your computers to the internet. I don't expect you to have done this if you don't know what it means. But if you do know what it means, then don't do it. Yeah, it's a fairly surefire way to make sure people have access to your computer, whether or not you have good password, because there are ways in which people can break in over time. Use programs like RDP Defender on remote desktop server machines. So any of you that are running RDS or RDP servers to host all of your remote workers, for example, then there are products, bits of software that you can run on them that just add another layer of security. And call your IT provider for an audit of your systems just to identify security issues. Yeah, remediation, what do you do if it happens to you? Block remote access from IP addresses where unauthorized logins are occurring from. Remediate damage if any. You can use backups, change passwords, lock people out. Those are the kind of important things. What I'm meaning with the RDP ports and bits and pieces like that, some of the problems crop up when you have an insecure account on your network, and it might be something that's never been thought of. So kind of things we've seen during the onboarding process of customers where we've picked them up from other IT vendors is things like an account to make the scanner work on your computer network. So you have an account called Scanner and you have the password on it called Scanner. And then someone who has been trying to resolve a problem on your system from your old IT company had gone and given it administrative privileges rather than actually fixing a problem, which is a common thing we see where people have, rather than actually fixing a problem, they just override it by giving more access to Scanner account, and then that gets used to break into your system, and it's not something you'd normally think about, and not something that you'd normally pick up. So it's important to make sure that those are locked up well and tight, and that you've got good backups, and that your IT vendor is actually doing their job properly, making sure your systems are locked down properly and that people can't get in. Yeah. So we're going to have a look at some preemptive measures. So this is just a little bit of a recap, I guess. We all kind of get many emails daily, and it's easy to open something insecure on accident when in a rush. So it's important to be cautious. So ask yourself these questions for every email. Is the message from someone you know? Were you expecting a link or attachment from them? Does it make sense in context with your business role? Does the link destination match its description? All of those sort of things are important to check whenever you're receiving email. And I know that's something that happens constantly throughout the day. It's really important to know that the email that you're getting is actually legitimate. It's one of the first and major ways of anything bad gets into your computer system. So the first one. Next thing we're going to look at is passwords. So it's important to try and make your passwords as solid and secure as possible. It'll mean that you're less likely to become a victim. You need to avoid dictionary words easily tied to you and repeatable passwords. Include numbers, symbols, upper and lowercase letters, and never send it to anyone or reveal your passwords. Use two-factor authentication where possible. This is some examples of unsecure passwords there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's sequential, it's all numbers. It's really easy to guess. Password, the word password, password 1, capital P, there's another layer of security there, but so many people have used it, it's now apparently the most common password in the world. These are some examples of decent passwords. There's repeated, there's capitals, there's lowercase, there's special characters, there's numbers, all sorts of things like that, and they're pretty long. Those are sort of important ones too. Don't make them too bad. I mean, even Microsoft has gone away from recommending password changes every 90 days. They've actually absorbed the fact that it's less of a security issue if you have a good secure password for a long period of time than it is to have a poor standard of password changed regularly. So they've even gone away from recommending that within the Microsoft Office 365 system. So that's kind of important to note as well. Just set yourself something that's really good, remember it, and then try and keep on top of it. Password vault applications I've seen quite a few people using, and they are good. You know, they are secure at keeping track of your passwords, but remember they need to be passworded well yourself. And if you have your bank login details saved in a password vault on your computer, and your computer has no password, then if someone gets in front of the computer itself or talks you into giving them access to their computer, then that's, you know, not much use. So they're not the answer to everything, but they do, you know, they provide a fairly useful service, often at a fairly decent cost. So yeah, the next bit is modern equipments and updates. So older IT hardware doesn't necessarily get updated. Standards that were safe 10 years ago have mostly been superseded by better ones. Older hardware should be checked by someone qualified to make sure it's secure. What I'm talking about there is if you've got a $5,000 Cisco router that was 10 years old, it probably hasn't been updated since, and the IT world has changed a hell of a lot since since 2010. So even though it was top of the line then and the most secure thing you could possibly get, it doesn't still need to be checked. A lot of newer computer hardware equipment, so Cisco's newer products, the ones we often install and recommend, the Cisco Meraki range, are what's called a next generation firewall, and they feed off a central update system that Cisco operate, where they automatically update themselves, they automatically supply security patches to themselves, and they sort of look after themselves a whole lot better than some of the older equipment. So if you've got old stuff there, it's important to make sure it is actually doing what it needs to. Software is the same. Windows 7 and older no longer receive security updates from Microsoft, nor does Windows Server 2008 R2 and older. It's important that these systems are upgraded to supported operating systems. So if you're running older servers, you know, you shouldn't have any Server 2003 systems anymore. Shouldn't have any 2008, shouldn't have any 2008 R2. The oldest Windows operating system that is still okay is Windows Server 2012. If you don't know any of this stuff, just, you know, check with your IT partner as well, and they can provide that sort of information to you. Same with Windows. You shouldn't have any Windows 7 machines left. They are a security hole in your network. Basically, they don't get security patches in the same way that Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 8.1 do at all. And it's really important that those machines are removed from businesses as soon as they can be. And same Windows XP. There's still some out there. You know, get rid of them if you can. Sometimes there are circumstances that mean people kind of have to use them, in which case there's another layer of security that needs to be put in place. They should be kept off the internet, and they shouldn't be used sort of for any business critical role unless they're completely isolated. We see them not infrequently in the factory automation space, and those sort of things where pretty big amounts of money were used to automate systems and processes previously, but then the cost to actually upkeep them was never taken into consideration. So in those circumstances, those systems run behind very, very secure firewalls and are not allowed access to the internet. So those are important too. Cybersecurity. So it's a popular misconception that cybersecurity can be 100% effective. IT administrators endeavor to mitigate a lot of inherent risk, and in that we're largely successful, but no IT system is completely impervious. The majority of security threats in the wild today rely on a single common element for entry. Time and experience has proven the easiest way onto a network is to bypass security systems that are in place and prey directly on you, the end user. So what is important to know is that if you're going to use very insecure passwords and things like that, then you're leaving yourself wide open. Make sure you're schooled up. You've taken the right step by actually listening to this sort of thing and learning a little bit about how people find their way into, or how criminals find their way into systems and what they're doing, what they're trying to actually achieve. We have a suite of products that we offer that we'll have a little look at, which help out with this sort of thing. So we'll just go through what they are and what makes them different. So ThinkSafe is our backup product. It runs on a PC and it backs up to cloud storage. It can locally back up as well. It's a useful little tool and it keeps an encrypted copy of a backup. for a fairly substantial length of time, depending on the, up to years, depending on the amount of data you're backing up. So that's a useful one, and that certainly allows us to restore from a crypto virus, something like that. It definitely, having a product like that on your machine is a massive help in the instance of you getting into trouble. The particularly important thing here is that it keeps the files that it's backed up from your computer somewhere away from your location, which also means that in the instance of the proper disaster recovery, like building burning down or something like that, it is restorable somewhere else. We can start your system up in the cloud and then get your guys working again remotely. We have a antivirus product which is called ThinkProtect. It's powered by ESET, so that's the Nod32 product that you'll be used to. We've kind of preferred it and pushed it for years, but this particular iteration of it, ThinkProtect, also includes the application updates. Because it's centrally managed, we can see when ESET release an updated version of the endpoint antivirus product, it automatically gets updated on all of your computers. ThinkAhead is our audit and update tool, and basically it monitors your computers, automatically applies updates for Windows and also third-party applications. So the likes of Google Chrome, Firefox, the Microsoft Office platform, anything like that, it'll automatically apply updates. Java, it'll automatically deal with all of those, and it reports back to you monthly on the status of your network, so you can see if there's anything that needs work. Think Dark Web. So this is quite a cool little product. This is something we've started doing recently, and it's been really popular, and it's avoided some pretty major issues already. So what it does is the company that provides this product that we on sell is they have a team of people who peruse the dark web and look for databases of email addresses and passwords that have been listed for sale. And when your domain name, so for us it's thinking.co.nz, if a password shows up, an email address shows up, or a username shows up with thinking.co.nz on it, then it automatically alerts us to that, and it will provide the information about where all of that came from. It might show that it was LinkedIn got broken to a year ago, and that's where this email address and passwords come from, or it might be from the Animates leak a while back or something like that. So this constantly monitors for any of these sort of indications that your domain name might have been compromised, that one of your staff may have entered information into a system they shouldn't have, or something like that. And that is really, really important for helping you prevent your business from being a target of one of these attacks. What actually happens with your systems when you get one of these sort of intrusions into your computer? I mean, basically it's reduced system performance. You might have apps not working, so Office might not start, or you'll try and look at a picture or something you've saved on your computer, a document, and it won't open. Documents not working at all, and you may find that some computers just won't turn on at all. They'll like try and get halfway through starting Windows and it won't actually work. If you think you've been attacked or infected, then contact us straight away. That's always a good one. Even if you really only mildly suspect that you've been attacked, contacting us is the best thing for you, and let us know as early as possible, and that'll allow us to act accordingly and isolate the infection and stop further access into your system. Well, we're almost at the end of it, guys, so thanks for sticking with us. So we'll have some time shortly for some questions and answers, so feel free to click the Q&A button on your screen, and you can enter any queries you've got. I had a couple sent through earlier, or I had one sent through earlier, which we'll go through shortly. The key takeaways for this were basically to stay away from bad pop-ups on the screen, don't follow links, attachments that you don't trust, check the tos and froms fields and emails, and always second guess validity. Frequently change passwords when they're insecure, maybe not as frequently as every 3 months, but a change every now and then is not a bad thing. But a good secure password is really important. And when in doubt, reach out to us on 0800 4THINK. Thanks heaps for the time you've given me this afternoon, and feel free to give us a shout if you have any of these sort of queries. We certainly can have a chat to you. One of our friendly team can have a discussion with you about what you can do to improve your system. If you're a business that's not a customer of ours, then yeah, feel free to have a chat and we can organize an audit of your system and go through everything. Right, so again, the Q&A button is on your Zoom window. You can click that and ask any questions you like. The question that got sent through earlier was what the bare minimum is with respect to IT security for remote workers, and that is an interesting question, actually. So the gist of it is we have seen a lot of people letting staff, a lot of businesses letting staff use their own personal machines, which is quite difficult to secure remotely, to connect into business systems. So really the bare minimum is that they have an up-to-date antivirus product. They're connected to a secure wireless network. So if you happen to have a staff member who's living in a hostel or something and connected to an open wireless network, that's probably not a good idea. Up-to-date antivirus product, connected to a secure network, and just get them to watch this so they have the ability to keep an eye out for any sorts of IT intrusions. Make sure you do that. The best in class, the next part of that question was, what was the best thing you can do for IT security for remote workers? That is an all-encompassing approach. That is, your business supplies your staff with the equipment, so that is the computer. They supply the internet connection, which is, might be a 4G connection in your computer itself. You have a managed antivirus product like our ThinkProtect product and all of those other products attached as well. So the Think Ahead product as well, put those together, and then the actual business's security policy is pushed out from a central point. So we use some of the Microsoft ATP Advanced Threat Protection products, the Microsoft Intune product for policy, and that all gets pushed out to the computer. So it might be that we lock out certain websites utilizing those sort of tools, those sort of bits and pieces. But really the height of security with those, the height of security for remote workers is that you supply everything as a business to that user. Particularly important when your users are accessing files and bits and pieces on their computer locally. Like, probably not a good idea to install your business Dropbox or SharePoint or something onto a staff member's personal computer, just because you don't know what else is happening with it. So if you can keep it all on your own equipment, that's the best way of dealing with it. I haven't seen any other questions come through, so we'll wrap it up. But thanks very much for all of your time, everyone. This webinar will be available for download if you want to pass it along to staff members in order to use it as sort of internal training or anything like that. It will be available for you. So thanks very much for your time. We'll wrap it up now and we'll make this available for you later on. Thank you.